Hello learners, welcome back to the course on learning and development in organization. We move to the fag end of this particular course where we'll try to discuss more of what is happening in the world of practice. So what is effective? We have understood all about learning and development. So let's now understand whether what we have discussed in terms of learning and development, whether it is actually true or whether it is actually effective. So to understand whether the effectiveness of all the learning and development initiatives are there, we have to ascertain it with some evaluation, some pattern of measurement, and that is particularly what I'm going to discuss today. We'll start with a module where we'll be looking into evaluating the learning and development programs specifically. And as part of today's lecture, we'll start with the proceedings where we'll be trying to discuss why we need the evaluation parameters and what are the effective evaluation parameters when it comes to learning and development. I'm Cyril Issac. I'm an assistant professor at the School of Business, Indian Institute of Technology, Guwahati. So let's start with today's theme. When we talk about learning and development, especially the evaluation, so change is the end result of true learning. When we talk about learning and development initiatives across an organization, we have to ascertain that all the initiatives that are happening with respect to learning and development, typically they lead to change. If there is no change that is happening, then the whole process becomes futile. That is why change is the end result of all true learning, and this is very much applicable in the world of practice when we initiate with the learning and development initiatives within an organization. Let's start with evaluating learning and development. Evaluating the effectiveness of training is vital to understand how well a training program impacts employee knowledge, his or her skills, performance, and most importantly, I will say, the ROI, something which we have discussed across the different modules, the return on investment. So in order to determine the effectiveness of a training program, the objectives of the training should be clearly defined. They should be in a position to understand what is the training for and why the training is delivered. So this clear objective allows the impact of the training to be accurately measured. So measuring becomes vital mainly because we are looking into the objectives, and it serves as a basis for all the future training decisions, be it continuing similar training methods, or maybe you are going to adapt a new approach altogether. So what is critical? What is critical when it comes to evaluating learning and development? I would say define clear training objectives to align outcomes with expectation. Assess the knowledge and skills gains that happens through tests, assessments or observations. When you are looking into what you have gained from a training program, the gain has to be monitored and the outcome has to be measured. So this is vital. Track performance improvements linked to job roles and business goals. So typically, what is your expectation from a particular job role? What is the employer expectation, the task, the duties, and the responsibilities? All these aspects, are they matching with your KSA? Something which I have already mentioned in the previous module, with your knowledge, skills, and abilities. Are they in a match? This tracking is vital. So when you are looking into evaluation, it is all about tracking performance improvements linked to job roles and business goals. And finally, what I've already brought into the discussion parameter, which is ROI, measure the return on investment by comparing training costs to organizational impact and the productivity gain. So when we are looking into evaluation of any L&D program, any learning and development initiative, it is imperative just to look into the ROI by comparing the training cost to organizational impact and the productivity gains. Now let's look into the important KPIs for L&D. When you're looking into the KPIs, which I've already introduced, the key performance indicators, in order to measure the effectiveness of learning and development, it is vital to define and monitor the key performance indicators. So basically, these KPIs serve as benchmark for the success of training measures and allow organizations to actually accurately assess the value of their investment in employee development. So the key performance indicators, if you ask me, that are often used, they are: 1, training program completion rate. This particular key performance indicator, which is the training program completion rate, indicates how many employees actually complete the training programs that are offered. So a high completion rate can indicate effective training and shows that the participants are motivated to learn the knowledge that is offered to them. So training program completion rate is an absolute measure which gives a clear idea, which gives an indication of whether the training program was at least attended by the intended audience to a certain rate or acceptable demeanor. The second important aspect, or the second important KPI, would be application of skills learned in the workplace. So this key performance indicator, if you ask me, it measures the extent to which participants actually apply the skills learned in training in their daily work. So a high application rate indicates that the training was relevant to practice and has a direct benefit for the employee's work performance. When you are looking into the applications of skills learned, is it directly leading to the work performance, or is it directly enhancing the work performance? Is it adding momentum to the work performance? That is what is measured typically by the skills learned in the workplace. The third significant KPI which we'll discuss today is the change in the key performance indicators itself. So this KPI monitors how specific performance indicators have changed before and after training. So something like post facto and a priori and post facto. So before and after. What is the significant change? Indicators such as, let's say, employee surveys or employee retention feedback. It could be from supervisors, it could be from your workers or even your subordinates that can provide information here. So increased satisfaction and engagement can indicate that the training has a positive impact on the working atmosphere and employee motivation. The other important factors would be that typically when you talk about the change in key performance indicators and employee satisfaction, which is the fourth aspect, you have to understand that some aspects like, let's say, productivity, or sometimes it would be error rates. All these aspects typically give us some feedback and can be used to change the existing key performance indicators. And this change will effectively lead us towards a situation of employee satisfaction and engagement. The fifth aspect would be ROI, return on investment of the training measures. If you ask me, this KPI calculates the financial return on investment in learning and development. So it compares the costs of running the training courses with the benefits achieved, such as, let's say, increased productivity, which we have already seen, increased turnover or improved quality. So quality also is being considered, and needless to say, quantity begets quality here. So typically if you look into quality, it is also measuring or giving us a standardized measure for the learning and development program. So a positive ROI typically indicates that investment in personnel development was profitable and it created added value for the company typically. Now let's look into the business impact framework, that is the direct business metrics approach. So if you ask me, the direct business metrics approach, the core philosophy would be that it represents a fundamental shift from measuring training satisfaction to more of business transformation. So it's a measure of training satisfaction towards business transformation. So typically you see that from a mere initiative of training or training program or training satisfaction, you are going all the way towards a business transformation. So instead of asking, let's say, did employees like the training? We ask, did the training move the business needle altogether? This approach connects every learning dollar spent to a business outcome. So whatever is the investment, be it in terms of rupee, in terms of dollar, whatever is the investment, the monetary aspect that you are spending for the organization, whether there is an actual outcome, whether there is a transformation that is happening, that is vital when it comes to business impact framework. So it connects training efforts to key business outcomes. It evaluates the productivity, the quality, revenue, or even the efficiency, and it certainly aligns learning spent with the organizational performance. When we talk about the business impact framework, we have to start with the revenue focused metrics, and one of them would inevitably be the sales performance improvement. So typically this sales performance improvement post training goes beyond the simple revenue tracking. It's all about the conversion rate exchanges, track how the training affects the percentage of, let's say, leads converted to sales. Somebody who in sales will appreciate it is not an easy task to convert all the leads that you get towards sales, or sales cycle acceleration. Sales cycle acceleration, a measure whether trained salespeople close deals faster, or there could be some win rate improvements. Win rate improvements where you compare competitive win rates before and after training, or even the account penetration. Monitor whether trained reps expand existing accounts more effectively. Let's take an example to understand this. Let's say a software company tracked 50 sales reps through CRM training. So pre-training average deal size was, let's say, somewhere around 45K USD. Post-training average increased to 62K USD within, let's say, a period of 6 months. So typically you see that it directly attributes to better need analysis and solution positioning skills. This is what is the relevance of what we understand as revenue focused metrics. We also do understand that when we talk about the revenue focused metrics, we also have customer acquisition rates for trained versus untrained activities. So when you look into the customer acquisition rates for trained versus untrained teams, you see that this metric requires careful cohort comparison. So new customer volume, the count of new customers acquired by trained versus untrained teams, that could be one of the parameters. There could be other aspects like, let's say, customer quality metrics. There could be, when you talk about customer quality metrics, it's the measure lifetime value of customers acquired by each group. Then there could be, acquisition cost efficiency. Acquisition cost efficiency is to calculate the cost per acquisition for trained versus untrained teams. And there could also be geographic comparisons. Geographic, or I will say market comparisons. So compare the performance across similar markets with different training levels. So when you talk about the customer acquisition rates for trained versus untrained teams, you will see a span of revenue focused metrics, right from the customer volume increase towards quality metrics, towards acquisition cost efficiency, and even the geographic or market comparisons. Then you have the average deal size increase following sales training. So if I have to understand this, this would be a sophisticated measurement, and it would include anything from, let's say, product mix analysis. So when you talk about product mix analysis, it is to determine if training drives higher margin product sales. Then there might be some upselling success. Track the ability to expand initial deals during negotiation. There could be some discount or discount reduction altogether, which measures whether training reduces the discounting behavior. Then there can also be some deal structure optimization. Deal structure optimization, which is all about evaluating improvements in contract terms and structure. So typically, when you look into the average deal size increase, it has certain way to analyze itself, like the product mix analysis, upselling success, discount reduction, deal structure optimization. Now let's look into the time to productivity for new hires. So time to productivity for new hires is certainly yet another critical measure, and it will have some clear parameters like, let's say, onboarding velocity. What is this onboarding velocity? How quickly new hires reach performance standards. So if you have gone through certain marketing courses, you will definitely would have heard onboarding velocity as a term. Then there is this steepness of your learning curve. So learning curve is also vital. Rate of improvement in key performance indicators, that is being reflected in the learning curve steepness. Then there could be some MCRs, management or manager confidence ratings. So manager confidence ratings are typically supervisor assessments of readiness for independence, and there could also be an error rate measurement or error rate decline, speed at which new hires achieve the quality standard. So when you talk about time factor on a temporal scale, you would always look into onboarding velocity, you will look into learning curve steepness, you will have a check on with the manager confidence rating, and there will be also error rate decline typically. Now it's time to look into the operational efficiency metrics. The second aspect is the operational efficiency matrix. We'll start with the process improvement rates after training interventions. So operational training should drive measurable process enhancement. So we'll have the cycle time reduction, which we have already touched upon. Measure how the training reduces time to complete key processes. You will also have quality improvements. Quality improvements where you track defect rates, network or rework requirements, and first pass yield. There will be also some automation adaptation. Automation adaptation where you monitor uptake of new tools and technologies post the training initiatives, and you will also have the SOP compliance, that is the standard operating procedure compliance. Measure the adherence to the best practices that we generally do here. So if I have to take an example, I will use the typical case of a manufacturing plant implemented lean training for supervisors. Within 90 days, the trained supervisors area showed 23% reduction in waste, 18% improvement in throughput, and 31% decrease in the quality incidents. So this is what you have when you look into the process improvement rates after training interventions. The second aspect under the operational efficiency metrics which I want to discuss today would be the error rate reduction in critical process. This requires precise before and after measurement because you are looking into the error reduction part. So we'll start with error frequency. Error frequency is nothing but the count errors per transaction, per process, or the time period that is specified. You can also have the error severity classification. Error severity classification means weight different types of errors by business impact. So the weightings will give you the error severity classification. Then we have the standard RCA, the root cause analysis, which will help us to determine which error typically affects the training and what can the training do to address the same. Then there will be also a possibility of prevention versus detection. Measure whether the training prevents errors or it improves by catching them. Then we move on to the compliance incident decreases. So it is critical, typically if you ask me, for regulated industries. For regulated industries, like regulatory violation frequency could be one aspect. Track the incidents that could result in fines or sanctions. There could be also internal audit findings. Internal audit findings that will monitor the compliance gaps identified in internal reviews, that would give a measure of the compliance gaps that is existing, that are identified in the internal reviews. There could be also the case of near miss reporting. Near miss reporting is a measure whether training increases proactive risk identification, and there will be also certification maintenance. Certification maintenance is tracking the success rates in maintaining required certification. So you have regulatory violation frequency as one of the standard measures. You can also have internal audit findings, you have near miss reporting and certification maintenance. And finally, under the operational efficiency metrics, we will also touch upon the equipment downtime reduction following technical training. So when you look into manufacturing and let's say technical organizations, they can measure this through certain parameters like mean time between failures. Between failures, that would be one of the significant parameters. When you look into improved maintenance, that reduces the equipment failures. You will also have a mean time to repair as one of the metrics, which gives a better troubleshooting skills that reduce the downtime duration. You can also have preventive maintenance. Preventive maintenance effectiveness measure, which is all about how training improves proactive maintenance quality. Then there is the safety incident reduction. Safety incident reduction that is, technical training often correlates with fewer safety issues. So these are some of the critical aspects or measuring elements when we discuss the equipment downtime reduction following the technical training. Now let's move into the innovation and growth indicators. So till now, if you look, what we have discussed was more retrospective in nature. Now we are looking into something which is more forward looking with innovation and growth indicators typically. So number of new ideas generated by trained employees. So this is vital, especially for innovation training. It would measure the creativity. So it can have aspects like let's say ideas submission rates. Idea submission rates where you count ideas submitted to innovation programs. you can also have idea quality scores. Idea quality scores evaluate the feasibility and potential impact of submitted ideas. You would also have the implementation success as a measure. Implementation success as a measure where we can track how many ideas become actual business improvements, and you will also have some possibilities where you can look into the patent applications. Where you monitor intellectual property generation from trained employees. So in case of number of new ideas generated by trained employees under the forward looking innovation and growth indicators, typically you will have the idea submission rates, you will have the idea quality scores, you will have the implementation success, and you will also be having the patent applications parameter. Now we move on to the second aspect, which is the speed of product development cycles. So for organizations that are focused on innovation, typically the speed of product development cycle is vital, and some of the parameters which we use to understand this would be the time to market acceleration. Time to market acceleration measures the reduction in the development cycle time altogether. There can be a typical construct like iteration velocity. Iteration velocity tracks how quickly teams can test and refine concepts. There can be also cross-functional coordination. Cross-functional coordination where you can evaluate improvements in team collaboration speed, and you can also have the decision-making speed measured. Monitor faster resolution of development bottlenecks. So when you look into the speed of product development cycles, it can be easily understood and comprehended through the time to market acceleration, through the iteration velocity, through the cross-functional coordination, and also through the decision-making speed. Now we'll discuss about the cross-functional collaboration effectiveness. Modern work requires seamless collaboration, period. So when you look into these aspects of cross-functional collaboration effectiveness, need to look into the project success rates. So when you're looking into project success rates, track the success of cross-functional initiatives. You look into the communication aspect, communication of quality metrics, where you're looking into how you can measure the clarity and effectiveness of inter-team communication that is happening within the training program. Then you can also look into the conflict resolution speed. Conflict resolution speed is to monitor how quickly teams resolve disagreements, and you will also have a metrics like the knowledge sharing frequency. It is all about tracking the information exchange between the departments. And finally, in the digital transformation adoption rates, you will see that it is emerging as one of the critical aspects for technology adoption initiatives. So you will have something called as tool utilization rate. What is this tool utilization rates measure? They measure actual usage of new digital tools, not the theoretical, not the ideal, but the actual usage of the new digital tools. We look into the feature adoption depth. Feature adoption depth track use of advanced features, not just the basic functionality. Under the digital transformation adoption rates, you will also see process digitization success. Process digitization success, which monitors the transition from manual to digital processes altogether. And you will also have another parameter which is called as the user proficiency growth. User proficiency growth, which helps in evaluating the skill development in digital tools over time. So when you look into the digital transformation adoption rates, you have the tool utilization rates, you have the feature adoption depth, you have the process digitization success, and you also have the user proficiency growth. So you'll see that a whole list of parameters in measuring different aspects like number of new ideas generated by trained employees, the speed of the product development cycles, cross-functional collaboration effectiveness, and digital transformation adoption rates. Now let's look into the implementation strategy. When you look into implementation strategy, you have to always consider the baseline establishment. Baseline establishment before any training intervention. So we have the historical data collection as part of that. So gather, let's say 6 to 12 months of pre-training performance data that will set the benchmark for your baseline establishment. You also have the control group identification, where you identify the similar employees, teams who won't receive training. You have a certain grip on the number and the set of people. You'll also look into the external factor documentation, where you note market conditions, you have an idea of the seasonal variations that are happening and typical other influences. And you also have a measurement system validation, where you ensure data collection methods are reliable and consistent. So when you look into the implementation strategy, you will have a process to be followed, right from historical data collection to control group identification, external factor documentation, and measuring the systemic validation. Now let's conclude this discussion by looking into the possible challenges for data integration. When you talk about the data integration challenge, I would start with the typical problem of system integration. The problem of connecting learning management systems, the existing LMS with business intelligence platforms, is a vital challenge faced by most of the organizations these days. So the system integration emerges as one of the significant challenge. There could be also problems pertaining to attribution modeling. Developing statistical methods to isolate the training impact from other factors is what attribution modeling is, and many a time this is emerging as yet another significant challenge in case of the data integration. When we talk about the challenge, we also have to see the stakeholder reporting, where we create dashboards that translate metrics into business language, and also we have to look into continuous monitoring, establishing ongoing measurement rather than just one-time evaluation. So this framework transforms learning and development from a cost center into a strategic business driver by directly connecting the learning investments to measurable business outcomes. So the key is selecting metrics that matter most to your organization's strategic objectives and measuring them with scientific rigor. That is the requirement of the day. So when we look into the typical aspects of learning and development program, ladies and gentlemen, please note that we are looking into the problems that pertain to the measurement of learning and development. We have looked into the barriers, we have seen what all are the possible barriers. We have also looked into the options that are available with us with respect to the different parameters that we can use to measure the learning and development initiative. So some are a priori and post facto, some are during the training process, some are with respect to a significant input that we receive after the training, so mainly outcome based. Whatever be the actual measure be, one thing is certain, that if you are not able to measure the effectiveness of a training program, seldom can you actually say that we had a wonderful training program and it had a significant impact on the organization or the employees. So this is where we stop. Please do understand, anything which cannot be measured cannot be improved. So this is what we focus on when we look into the evaluation parameter of training and development. So in the next session, we'll look more deeper into the evaluation parameters with respect to learning and development. Till then, take care. Bye-bye.